Seattle Atheist Church, because good works in non-mysterious ways.
So the full title of this talk is Burdened with Terrible Purpose: How to Ruin Your Life by Picking the Wrong Win Conditions. So I want to talk today about life purposes. I've given talks about life purpose before. Having a life purpose is great, highly recommended, helps you find focus and flow, prioritize your time and energy, feel in tune with the universe. That's all pretty great stuff. I strongly recommend you find your life purpose. As atheists, we don't have the option of having a purpose granted by a deity or deciding that the thing we most want to do just happens to be what God commands us to do. So we have to pick one ourselves. But how do you do that? How do you know you've picked the right one? And what if what you pick turns out to be absolutely terrible for you? You can change it. We get to change it. So I'm going to do you the favor today of eliminating some options for you, ruling out some bad choices for life purpose. I'm going to start with sort of things that are a little more obviously bad, and some of them will be a little more subtle later on. Don't pick any of these purposes. They will not enrich your life. The first rule for a life purpose that I want to cover is that it should be possible. Sometimes some people pick a purpose they actually can't do. This leads to misery. Share a little picture here. Actually, sorry, I wanted to share just part of that. Now, if you are a fish, that little fish in that bowl on the stump there, and you are presented with this test, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. You are not going to be doing so well. The monkey's happy. The bird's probably okay if flying up there will count. The dog, the seal, the penguin, and the fish are pretty much out of luck. If they have picked climbing trees well as their life purpose, they are going to be miserable. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid, among other qualities, right? It may also believe that it's weak, weak-willed, morally decrepit, whatever. You can believe a lot of bad things about yourself if you pick a purpose that's something you can't do. Because every time you think about what you're doing, you're going to feel miserable. So don't do that. Pick something you can do. It could be something you're not especially good at. It's okay. It doesn't have to be something you're perfect at or the best at or whatever, but it should be something that you are, in fact, fundamentally capable of doing. Pick something you can do and get enjoyment or satisfaction from the process, preferably both. One thing that happens sometimes with people with disabilities, they get told, you can do anything, which is kind of intended to be affirming, but actually it's kind of cruel at base. Because if you are disabled, there are literally some things you cannot do. That's what being disabled means. So it's much, much better to say what you can do is valuable. You can't do everything, but what you can do is valuable. And that's true for everyone, regardless of their abilities, regardless of their limitations. So pick something you can do. Step one. Another kind of terrible purpose is something someone else wants you to do, but you don't particularly want to do yourself. Worse yet, something you actually dislike doing, but you're going to pick it because you think you should do it, or you think you should want to do it. This is people-pleasing, and it will also make you miserable. People get burnout. They feel unconnected and unfulfilled. They feel like failures, even though they are devoting themselves entirely to a cause. So don't pick something that someone else picked for you or that your society as a whole is imposing on you. Think about what you want to do yourself. Another kind of Oh, yeah. Notice that illustration did not include such outcomes as fulfillment, joy, or even long-term productivity, because people burn out when they're not inspired by what they're doing. So don't pick your purpose based on someone else's wishes for you. It's okay, even great, if your wishes and someone else's wishes coincide, but don't pick it because someone else picked it. Similarly, don't make another person your purpose. Not even if they're your disabled child or a genius you're in love with. You still need a cause of your own. However much support you provide for another person or other people, maybe you share their purpose. Maybe the two of you have the same cause, and so you're supporting them in their work. Or maybe you have compatible purposes. It's not the same cause, but you can do the same thing to achieve it. Maybe your work for them isn't directly related to your own purpose. You're doing something else entirely, but they're your companion or your child or whatever. But don't just subsume yourself into someone else. You really do need to have an idea of what your purpose is, and it needs not to be just because someone else exists. Another piece of bad purpose, this is probably the most obvious one actually, don't pick something that makes the world worse. This should be obvious, but sometimes people pick a purpose that makes the world worse. It would be good to pick a purpose that makes the world better, but if you can't manage that, at least don't make things worse. Also, don't pick something that harms you. Well, not unless the results are really, really worth it. There are people who choose to defend their countries against attack, and they devote their lives to that purpose. That might be worth it. Maybe. There are people who take on kinds of work that they know will break their bodies in service of some larger cause. It could be carrying medicines by sled dog to a distant town. It could be doing ballet. If you think it's worth it, you can make those trade-offs. But make sure that you are deciding it's worth it and not just sacrificing yourself for something that you don't think is worth it. Don't go in blind, and don't sacrifice yourself for nothing. Don't use yourself up for something you don't value. Or another way of putting that, yes, this is partly the don't subsume your life for others, but also don't, oops, sorry. I am failing to get the right picture here. Ah, there. I'm sorry, I'm messing up the pictures. Never mind. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm is the idea. So next one. Another piece of that, actually. There's a quote from Lois McMaster Bejeweled. Some prices are just too high, no matter how much you may want the prize. The one thing you can't trade for your heart's desire is your heart. So make sure that the things that you give up for your purpose aren't actually the purpose. You know, don't give away the core of what you need in order to be fulfilled and feel like you have a purpose in life. If you're having to sell out too much in order to do what you're doing, that can end up leaving it hollow. So think about what the cost is of what you pick. Make sure that it's worth it. A slightly more subtle bad form of life purpose is a finite goal. Now, we're told that we should pick finite goals. Yes, as goals, but not as a life purpose. If you pick achieving some particular thing, some finish point, a finish line, a finished product as your life purpose, there are two things that can happen. Either you don't achieve it, in which case you're a complete failure. Your entire life purpose has failed. Your life had no purpose. Okay, that's a pretty bad fail, right? You get to the end of your life, you realize you never did the thing, then your purpose wasn't fulfilled. On the way, the whole time, you still are not fulfilling your purpose because you haven't done the thing. So you're spending your whole life not fulfilling your purpose, even if you're working towards it, because the purpose is the end point, right? If you don't reach the end point, you didn't do it. This is a bad way to define it. The other thing that can happen is you can achieve it. Great. Briefly. Now what? Now you have no life purpose. There is a song by a man by the name of Dan Byrne called Tiger Woods, which is somewhat more obscene than I'm going to play in church today, but you can look him up, and the song is funny, and part of it is about someone who set his life purpose as being a thing that he would accomplish, and then he did it early in life and then was miserable. So don't set yourself up for either of these kinds of misery, of never achieving your life purpose or of achieving it and now what? You don't want to set yourself up for the arrival fallacy. I will be happy when this thing happens, or post-achievement depression where you do the thing and then you're like, oh, but now what? Don't make your purpose a finished product. Don't make it one thing that you're going to do. You want it to be a process, something that you can be working on all the time. Make the purpose the process, not the end point. Another type of bad life purpose is too broad. If I say my purpose is to do good in the world, okay, that's great. That sounds fine, but how does that decide how you're going to spend your Tuesday? You know, there are a lot of ways to do good in the world. How are you personally going to do good in the world? What do you enjoy doing? What makes you all fired up to work on? What do you feel like you're really good at and in flow when you're doing? What kind of thing inspires you the most to work on? Which problems upset you the most and you want to fix them? What do you like working on? Little problems, big problems? Get it narrowed down so that your life purpose helps you make choices about how to spend your resources, your time, your money, your energy, whatever you've got. Your life purpose should be something that helps you focus what you're going to do. So don't make it too broad or it won't help and it won't inspire you. Another way of having too broad a purpose is thinking of money as your purpose. Money is not a purpose. Money is a real mistake to tie yourself to as a purpose. My picture here. Okay, so this guy is chasing the money all his life. And chasing, and he's got a bunch of it, and then he's got a whole bunch of it, and he hits the end of his life, and now he's just got the money. Money is not anything. Money is a means for things. So if you want money, think about what you want that money for. If you had money, what would you do with it? Would you travel the world? Would you pay off all your friends' medical debts? Would you fund research into cancer? Would you house the homeless? You know, what are you going to do with that money? Okay, so think about how those choices can inform a life purpose that is not based on the just piling up money, because that's a trap. That's a race and a trap, and you can always make more money, but what are you doing with it? Yeah, you can do lots of things. You can lobby for political changes. You can fund arts projects. Some things you can't do with money are get people to think you're funny. Sorry, Elon, that doesn't work. And you can't even buy having them not think you're a creep. So if you're thinking you can do that with money, give up on that. But if you want to do something that money actually can buy, like research and public welfare and art and fun experiences, money can do those things. Sure, put those into your purpose. Think about what changes you'd make to your life or the world or other people's lives. Use those to help you pick a purpose. Another somewhat subtle bad life purpose. This is actually one Mickey picked for a while, and we didn't realize at first that it was a really unhelpful purpose. Mickey decided that she wanted to be that her purpose was to be the best tool for as many jobs as possible. Okay, that sounds kind of fun and fulfilling, right? If you think about how this plays out, it actually just means you are always scrambling, because since you're the one who's best at everything, people come to you for everything, which means you can never do a really good job at everything because you're too thin, you're spread out too thin. So you never have the satisfaction and security of really doing a good job because you're always anxious. Um, and if this is happening to you, instead of trying to be the best tool for all jobs, try mentoring so that there are more people who can do the things, and delegating. Narrow the parts you're personally responsible for. Focus on the ones that you most enjoy being best at, or maybe that other people cannot be made good at. You're just naturally really good at these things. Pick a different purpose for yourself. Do not try to be all things. So there are ways to pick a bad purpose by being too broad or trying to do everything. Conversely, you also don't want to make it too specific and confining. Don't make your specific job your purpose. For example, if you make your specific job your purpose, if you get laid off or when you retire, you'll have an existential crisis. Now you don't have a purpose anymore. Bad idea. Don't make your purpose anything that is time limited, situation limited. It should be something that you can do no matter where you are or what your circumstances are. You can always be living this purpose. You can find ways to do it. Don't make it an identity description of any kind, in fact, not just a job, but a political or religious label, any kind of an identity label like that. That traps you into a definition of yourself that doesn't allow you to grow and shift if your situation or your opinions start to change. So figure out, if you're using a label like I'm a Democrat or something like that, what values or actions in the world are you referring to with that? What are you representing with that label or category or role in your life? Focus on those descriptors, the values or actions, when you're thinking about your purpose. You may well be able to enact those by being, a choir member or a Freemason or, a carpenter or whatever. But make sure that you can tie it to values and actions, tie it to ways that you're doing good in the world, ways that you can find fulfillment, rather than specific names or boxes you can put yourself in. In summary, I've talked about all the things your life purpose should not be. Your life purpose should be possible, pleasing, personal, positive or pro-social, process-oriented rather than finite and limited, particular, narrow it down enough to be useful, and portable, something you can do in multiple contexts or situations. So I've set up 7 P's here. It's kind of arbitrary, P for purpose, and all of these start with P. A lot of ways to screw things up, but there are a lot of ways to do them well as well. I can post a link to this if people want to keep it for later. So we can talk about examples of life purpose as well. My own life purpose has been for many years now, because I seem to have settled into this one, to make people smarter and happier. It's broad enough that I can apply it in a lot of contexts. My work is teaching, obviously applies there. Parenting, being a spouse, mentoring or advising people. I can telling people in answers to questions on the internet. I can do those things in lots of ways. But it's also narrow enough that I don't get off track doing things that really aren't making anybody any smarter or happier. Also, note, I am people too. So if I'm making myself smarter and happier, I'm fulfilling my purpose. So other possible life purposes, one example is Mickey's current life purpose, which she's stuck with for a few years now, quite a few years now, is to make safe spaces for people to learn and grow. I think I've got that right. It might have shifted a bit. Maybe Mickey can inform me if that's outdated. So those are a couple examples of possible life purposes, and I've given you a lot of bad ones. I hope that's food for thought. Let's talk about it.